We'll just go back a little bit, page 7 in the text if people have the text. There's one copy here. Anyone wants it? Just what's that? Yeah, you could bring it. I announced the pages. It is on Chabad.org, so you can look it up and have it on your phones. So we started learning over the last couple of days that the author of this work, Shar B'tochen, Rabbeinu Bachya, Ibn Pekuda, he's been speaking in general terms about people who rely on anything other than Hashem. Remember, we said it's very binary. Either you rely on Hashem or something else, but a human being cannot function, cannot exist without having some kind of support, and you get to choose if that support is going to be Hashem or if the support is going to be other things. And now he's going to bring specific examples of things that people place their trust in, and how these things are not really very trustworthy. They don't really provide you the same security that Hashem can provide you. So there's relying on your wisdom, your strategies, your schemes, your physical strength, your own efforts, and what's the consequence of those? If you rely on those things, then basically your efforts will be in vain, because you'll become weak, you will lose that physical strength, your schemes, your wisdom, everything that you think will help you will fall short of you accomplishing your goals. And he quotes various verses, and I had the occasion yesterday to say that everything is built on the foundation of verses from Tanakh. And this, here's an example. So he quotes for the first time in Shar B'tochen a pasuk from Tehillim. It says, Kfirim rashu v'ra'evu, young lions are hungry, they lack. So young lions lack. V'doisha Hashem, but those who seek Hashem, lo yachsuru kol tov, they will not lack any good things. All good things will be provided for them. So I'll tell you, just before I left Australia, I went to South Africa for a family chasna. And while we were there, we went to something called the Lion Park in Johannesburg, or just outside of Johannesburg. And it's a park dedicated to lions. All things lions. Anything you ever wanted to know about a lion, but we're afraid to ask, that was the opportunity. And we actually went into the lion's den, literally. Pity we didn't have my son Daniel there. That would have been very appropriate. But we went into the lion's den, and literally we were touching lions and everything. It was quite frightening. The real test of bitochen, by the way. So you could rely on the lion tamer, or you can rely on Hashem. And what he's saying here is better to rely on Hashem. So one of the things that the zookeeper, the environmentalist, said, he said a lot of really interesting things about lions. I mean, this guy knew everything you ever could know about lions. He is an expert. And he said that there's something called a twitch muscle. A twitch muscle means how quickly you react to something. So if how quickly, if you see the traffic stopped and you traveling fast, between seeing the traffic stop and slamming on the brake, that's called if you have very fast twitch muscles, you'll be able to hit the brake very fast. If you have slow twitch muscles, you'll hit it slower. So he tells us that a lion is like the perfect hunting machine. A lion is perfect at hunting. So he said that a lion's twitch muscles are 800 times faster than a human being's. Which means that if the lion wants to, if he says a bracha, shakal niyo b'dvarei, you're not getting away. It's just not getting away. Because he can move so much faster than you, and it's just, he will like observe, and his claws are perfectly designed. Hashem designed his claws perfectly for hunting. His stamina, every part of a lion is like just this perfect killing machine, right? Hashem created it perfect to be able to get its food. So with all that, David HaMelech tells us in Tehillim that Kfirim Rashu v'Ra'evu, the lions, the young lions, means the ones that are at the peak of their health and their twitch muscles are twitching at 800 times the speed of mine, maybe more the speed of mine, but 800 times of the fastest human beings. And nonetheless, they are hungry. But a person who has bitachon in Hashem never goes hungry. In other words, they, you would think, of any animal would be able to rely on their strength and their natural God-given talents, but no, they are not, they do suffer lack. The next thing, so again, he's speaking about relying on your own talents, your own abilities, the degree that you got, your seichel, your ability to communicate with people, to understand people, whatever it is that you think is some kind of a talent that you have. If you rely on that talent to procure your parnasa, your livelihood, that is not bitachon. Now, the next thing he says that a person could rely on is an abundance of wealth. And remember, I told you the story yesterday about that person who said Hashem couldn't take the wealth away from me, and then he signed away his wealth. And it says if a person relies on that, it will be removed from him and it will be left to someone else. So in other words, all the wealth that the person amassed will just flow to someone else. Or alternatively, even if the riches themselves are not removed from the individual, he says, his ability to enjoy the wealth will be withheld from him. Right? And then he quotes Shlomo HaMelech, where he says, V'lo yashlitenu Elokim lechol mimenu. Hashem won't give him the power, the ability to eat from his wealth, to derive benefit from it. So if he's not going to derive benefit from his wealth, why is it there? So the Shar B'tachon says it will be with him as a deposit, so that he'll be able to guard it from harm until the time that it will be returned to the one who's deserving of it and from who it was meant. Okay? Then he says it's possible also that the money will be a cause of his misfortune, as well as the cause of the destruction of his soul. So here I'll tell you an interesting personal story which I experienced. So he said that, wealth could be destructive. Wealth is not necessarily a positive thing. So first of all, I'll tell you that I was once flying many, many years ago. This was about 30 years ago. I was flying somewhere and on JetBlue, and in those days JetBlue would show you actual live television shows. And one of the shows that they had was it was about these 4 or 5 lottery winners who won incredible lotteries, like $300 million, $400 million, $500 million in the United States. And they go through their lives, the wealth that they enjoy and everything. But I noticed that one of them said, the worst day of my life was when I won the lottery. Okay? Then they get this other chap to speak, and he says that he had to borrow the money from a friend to pay for the taxi to go down and collect his check, because he couldn't afford the taxi ride down. But he also said that the worst day of his life was when he won, $300 million in the lottery. And then the third person said the same thing. And this was all not coordinated in any way. They were just telling their story. Each one of the 4 confessed that the worst day, the worst thing that ever happened to them in their entire life, bar none, and some of them had really sad, backstories. They said the worst thing that ever happened in their life is that they won the lottery. So I remember I was a bocher and newly minted Baal Tshuva. I was about 14, 15 years old. And I had a friend in school, and his father, so I went to this friend's bar mitzvah. So let me describe the bar mitzvah. It was a small, intimate affair. There were about 3,500 people. It was in a hall like you've never seen in your life. It's like this huge, it was really multiple halls, but they were able to remove the partitions, so it made it one huge hall that 3,500 people could fit in. 3,500 of their closest friends. What was quite astounding about that bar mitzvah is that they gave you a menu, like literally as if you would go to a restaurant and there was a menu. You could have, for the main course, chicken, or you could have steak, or you could have fish, or whatever you wanted for the main course. And they came and they took the waiters came and took your order. So that means they must have had, I'm sure they would kind of guesstimate, but there must have been a large room for error over there. They flew out Avram Fried to South Africa. They flew out the Piamenters to South Africa. They flew out Mordechai Ben David to South Africa, and a couple of others. I don't really remember at this point, but there was all the main singers came there. And I remember it was Parshas Noach, when was his Parsha. And a friend of the family stood up in front of 3,500 people, and he told the background story of the father. So the father's story starts actually with his parents. His parents were both married, not to each other, they were married to other people. His father had a wife, his mother had a husband, and they both had more than 10 children, double-digit children, right? With their respective spouses. And during the Holocaust, all of their spouses and all of their children perished. Right? On both sides. They didn't know each other. They both came back, they both came to Eretz Yisrael. They come to Israel, and they settle over there, and they both start working for an organization that places orphan children, unfortunately there were so many in those days, frum children, observant children, Chassidische children, who came from Chassidische homes, placed them in foster care. Right? So somehow the kids had come to Israel and they placed them, and there was an organization. They both worked for the organization, and they met each other at this organization. Right? Remember, this is the person telling the background story in front of 3,500 people at the most elaborate bar mitzvah I have ever attended. And they get married. So they meet each other and they marry each other, his parents. And they have one more child. And that's the father of the bar mitzvah. And they have one child together. And they raise this child in Yerushalmi. Yerushalmi Yidden, Chassidish Yidden, Vishnitzer Chassidim. And they raise their child in Yerushalayim. And they raise him, in tremendous wealth. They were tremendously wealthy people, just not in a financial sense. They were very poor. And they raise their one child in Yerushalayim, and they give him everything, but they don't give him money. It's not financial. They can't give him things. They have no money themselves. And he decides that he is not going to live in the same poverty as his parents. And so he is going to put himself through medical school. He's going to become a doctor, because being a doctor, that's the way that you make money. So he goes to the Vishnitzer Rebbe and he tells his Rebbe of his plans. he's newly married, and he goes to his Rebbe just after Sheva Brachas, and he says he's going to start the process of trying to get himself into medical school. So the Vizhnitzer Rebbe says, why do you want to go to medical school? And he says, because I don't want to raise my family in the same poverty that I was raised. So the Rebbe says, medical school is not for you. The Vizhnitzer Rebbe knew he was dealing with. It's not for you. It will be too much of a distraction from your Jewish. But the Rebbe says to him, the Vizhnitzer Rebbe says to him, I think you should go to South Africa. And there you will prosper. I give you a blessing in South Africa, you'll prosper. Now he didn't know where South Africa was. He had to look it up on a map. But he had got some gifts at his wedding. And he had enough money to buy 2 tickets, one-way tickets, to Johannesburg, South Africa. He bought one for himself and one for his new wife. And they literally came to Johannesburg to the airport. It was called Jan Smuts in those days. Today it's called Oliver Tambo. And they land at the airport. And that's it. That's how far. The Vizhnitzer Rebbe said, go to South Africa. It didn't say, well, okay, they were in South Africa now. And they had no money. They had 2 suitcases, and everything that they owned was in those 2 suitcases. And there was a person that they heard speaking Hebrew. So they went up to this Israeli person and they said, you know, we just arrived here, we don't have a place to stay. So this man said, you'll come and stay with me. And they went to stay with him. And this man was in diamonds. He was a diamond dealer. And he brought this new immigrant to South Africa. He brought him into the diamond business. And time passed, and he became what's called a De Beers site. Now, a De Beers site is probably not such a big deal today, but back then, talking, you know, probably 40, 50 years ago, a De Beers site, there were only 22 of them in the world, and pretty much 95, 98% of all the world's diamonds pass through those sites. So what a site was is basically a distributor. What you would do was De Beers would call you up, fax you, I don't know how they communicated, fax I guess. They would fax you and they would say, prepare $15 million, we're dropping a package for you. And the package would be full of diamonds, and they would take those diamonds and they would, and then they could sell the diamonds for whatever they wanted, but they had to give De Beers $15 million, and they got the package of diamonds. And De Beers, that time, was mining, again, 95+% of all the diamonds in the world. So 95+% went through these 22 distributors. And this guy built himself up till he became one of the De Beers sites, the distributors. Then he went into property, he bought some high-rise buildings in Manhattan, as one does. And, you know, obviously fabulously wealthy. So back to when I was 15 years old. I'm 15 years old, and I think somebody, I think it was a birthday, something. I forget what the occasion was, but there was a Farbrengen at this person's house. Now he had a beautiful home. The home was on a ridge. The home was on a ridge, and it was famous because it had a swimming pool which jutted out of the ridge. Johannesburg's a very flat city. There's one ridge in the whole city, okay? And this house was on that ridge. And there was a swimming pool that jutted out of this kind of hill, and it had a glass bottom. The whole bottom of the swimming pool was glass. So when you swam, you could look out at a large part of Johannesburg while you were swimming underwater. Anyway, I mean, the guy had like, I don't know, 20, 30 garages, each one filled with Ferraris and exotic sports cars and old sports cars. He had Picassos. He had a Picasso. We were Farbrengen in front of a Picasso, okay? Not because he appreciated art. He's just like, I don't know, you buy this thing for a few $1 million and a few years later you sell it for a few million more. I don't understand. I don't appreciate it. It looks ugly to me, but financially it makes sense. So this was the kind of wealth. So he's sitting there and he took a little bit of L'chaim, the father of the bar mitzvah boy, takes a bit of l'chaim. I'm trying hard not to say his name, but probably you could find out who it is. Takes a bit of l'chaim, and he says, "What's your name?" He asked me, "What's your name?" So I said, "Avraham." He says, "Avraham, how long have you been frum for?" So a couple of years ago, whatever. He asked me all the background. He says, "Let me give you a piece of advice." He said, "Don't continue your journey with Lubavitch. Become a Vizhnitzer instead. You'll become wealthy beyond your imagination. But if you are a Lubavitcher, you're going to remain poor your whole life." And he was totally right, at least to this point. It was good advice, I just didn't take it. It bothered me, what he had said. Remember, I'm a newly minted Baal Tshuva, I'm like kind of, everything's new. I don't know, is Vizhnitz a thing? Does one do that? What are the possibilities? Money sounds pretty good. I wouldn't mind having a swimming pool that juts out of a mountain with a glass bottom. Yeah, but maybe, if that's what, let me find out. So I went to my mashpia at the time, my Rav, and I asked him, is that true? Is it true that if you're a Lubavitcher, you're going to be poor, and if you're a Vizhnitzer, you could be rich? He said, yeah, it's probably true. Then I said, so why is that the case? Like, why is that the case? And he said, because the Rebbe looks at you holistically. And the Rebbe could understand that maybe for you and for your children, for your specific life mission in this world, maybe for you it's better that you don't have that fabulous wealth. Maybe that fabulous wealth will corrupt you and distract you from the purpose and the mission that you have, the very special, unique mission that you have in the world that nobody else has. And that is what he's saying here at Shar B'Tachon. He's saying that it's possible that the money will be the cause of his misfortune. It'll be the cause of his arrogance, of his feelings of superiority, which will lead him to betray God, which will lead him to betray his values. And, money is not an evil thing, as we spoke on the first day when we started the Unshakable. Money is not evil, but it is not, but it could be a source of a person's spiritual and even physical downfall, right? There's a lot of very, very wealthy people, and they turn to drugs and all sorts of things to try and feel alive again. Anyway, he continues to list other Torah advantages of having bitachon. And he says, among the Torah benefits of bitachon is that trust in God will bring a man not to serve any other entity. He won't need to place hope in man, another human being, or expect anything from other people. And as a result of self-reliance, he will avoid many behaviors that distract him from divine service. So if you are, and that's what I spoke about on the first day and the second day, that if you have bitachon, then you have independence. You have freedom. You do not have to flatter anybody. You don't have to go, I have a friend, which I'll tell you, I asked him before I came here if I could mention his name and tell some stories in his name. And he said, absolutely. He has no shame about anything. So I'll mention his name. His name is Rabbi Chanoich Rosenfeld. He is a shliach in a place called Hamilton, Ontario, about an hour and some drive from where I live. And he's a shliach on campus in Hamilton, Ontario. So I'm going to, please God, have occasion to really speak about his incredible journey with bitachon. This guy is battle tested. I call him, he's bitachon battle tested. Right? He lives bitachon. He wasn't always like that. But he lives bitachon today, a most amazing, incredible story of how he came to this. but his bitachon is so clear. So he said like this: before he had this level of bitachon that he enjoys today, he would go to a rich person to ask for a donation, and his kishkes, his guts, would be turning around inside him. He would be so nervous. Today, he doesn't have any nerves. You could have him speak to Elon Musk, to go and ask Elon Musk for a donation for his Chabad house. He will not be any more nervous than if he would come to me, who's a good friend of his. He has no nerves whatsoever, no anxiety, which is, of course, what we've learned is a benefit of bitachon. He has no anxiety. He goes to his to a donor with absolute equanimity. Doesn't have any nervousness. And of course, he's much more successful than he's ever been in terms of fundraising. But I'll tell you the whole story because it's really a marvelous story. But I just wanted to illustrate this one point, that before he had bitachon, when he was coming from a place of lack of bitachon, when he didn't have a bitachon mindset, and he was approaching these gvirim for donations, he was very concerned that they would reject him. Today, he says, whether they accept him or reject him, that is the ultimate good that Hashem wants from me. So why be nervous? And he's not. So he continues, he won't need to be subservient to these people in order to win their favor, and he will not feel the need to flatter them. He will therefore not consent to spend time with them on matters that are not related to the service of God. He will not be afraid of their wicked behavior, the repercussions of not flattering them, and he will not be fearful of their arguments with him. That's what he says. So I'll tell you another story which happened with me. This is a true story. I only make up true stories, by the way. I did tell you that, right? Okay. So before I came to Australia, actually from about 10 years, just over 10 years before I came to Australia, I had a part-time position as a Rav of a shul, and it was a really amazing period in my life. I remember Mr. B and Mr. E from yesterday. They were in that shul, so it was called the Zichron Kadoshim. Today it's called, Baruch Hashem, Chazak. Chazak stands for Chabad Zichron Kadoshim. But when I joined it, it was a modern Orthodox shul, and I was their young rabbi at the time. They made me old. And I spent a decade there, 10 years as being their Rav. But when I joined, the president told me, it's a full-time job with a part-time salary. That was the job description, full-time job, part-time salary. So they encouraged me, or I don't know if they encouraged me, but they allowed me to work and supplement my income. So I worked for a company which was a software company. And the software company was purchased by another software company which was publicly listed, and it was an Israeli company. So the company I worked with was called Open Sesame Systems, and the Israeli company was called Magic Software. They don't exist anymore, but they're called Magic Software. And their share price was about $2-3. When they bought Open Sesame System, as a result of that purchase, the market was very happy with that purchase. It shot up to about $90 a share. So instantly made lots of people very, very wealthy. And now Magic was running Open Sesame Systems, and before Magic had purchased us, we were working to get our system into a factory in Montreal. And there were a number of our competitors were competing for this account, for this project. And we were amongst, I think it was 5 finalists, right? So they narrowed it down to 5 potential software, and then they were going to meet with all of with these 5 companies, maybe it was a little less, and they would make their decision. So we didn't have the right amount of bitachon because we over-prepared for this thing. We prepared very hard. And everybody who was there had a job and a function, and So we came to their boardroom. I remember it very well. Oh my goodness, I'm starting to feel nervous even just telling you this. We come to their boardroom, and there's a big table, and there's two people sitting at the head of the table, the president of the company and the head of the HR department. The head of the HR department was an Italian lady, and she, a lady of Italian descent, and she was in the room because she was the main decision maker, because the software would impact her department the most. So they gave her the final say. They gave her veto. And as this started happening, I was like, uh-oh, I am in trouble. Because I was standing in the line, and what we were all doing is we were walking around the table, and we were shuffling past these people, and everyone was shaking the president's hand, and the head of human resource hand. Now, I'm not saying, I'm not saying that you have to do this. There are definitely halachic loopholes that you could get away from it. But certainly in those days, maybe I've changed a little bit since then, but in those days, I would not shake a woman's hand if it wasn't my wife's or my mother's. So I was sitting there, and time kind of went into slow motion. When time stops, like when you're about to have a car crash and everything goes really slowly. So I was there, and I was watching the former owners of Open Sesame Systems, who were both religious Jews, and they went and they shook the president's hand, and they shook this VP of HR. They shook her hand too. And then we had some non-Jewish programmers, head of our development, there were a whole bunch of different people, and they all went and they all shook the hand. Now on the other side of the building, of the room, there was the CEO of Magic. His name was Raphael. I won't say his last name. He was an Israeli. And he came, and he told me once, I'll tell you, even before this incident happened, he told me, he said, Abraham, he said, I hate religious Jews. But you're okay. So that was the kind of relationship we had. In fact, he interviewed me. He interviewed all of the employees when Magic purchased Open Sesame, and he let go about a third of the staff, but he kept me. So something made him, we hit it off. We had a good chemistry. But I saw him from the corner of the room, and I saw the look on his face, because he was thinking the same thing I was thinking, that I'm going to have to shake this woman's hand. And if I don't, that is going to be, it was a very large contract for us. And they needed it because there was so much hype over the purchase, and the stock price had gone so high. So they needed to convert it into like real tangible results. And it was coming up the quarter, and at the quarter where they wanted to book this before the quarter, and they certainly didn't want to lose it. And I think we were front runners. And in my peripheral vision, I could see his face. And let me tell you, if looks could kill, I would not be here today. Oh my goodness, there was pressure. And I walk around, and I'm thinking to myself, I had a bitachon thought. Did I tell you about ERT? We didn't discuss it. ERT stands for Emunah Response Time. And what Emunah Response Time means is the time from when something happens before you start thinking about Hashem and how Hashem could be involved in the thing. So the longer your emunah response time is, the less bitachon you have. So when something happens, that's like, the person calls the person in and says, you're fired. How long does it take before you think Hashem will take care of me, right? So that's called your ERT, your emunah response time. So I've tracked my emunah response time, because if it's not measured, it's not managed. And, Baruch Hashem, the more that I'm writing about bitachon and the more that I'm speaking about it, as I'm doing today, I feel like really my emunah response time is getting shorter, which is really wonderful. Like, I'm really pleased about that. But because time was going in such slow motion, maybe my ERT wasn't as good as today as then as it is today, but I had a feeling that I went through the following very fast, because the whole thing probably took a few seconds, but in my head I went through the following cheshbon, the following reckoning. I said to myself, everything I have is from Hashem. My extraordinary wife, I had 2 kids that time, Kenan and Hora. My 2 kids, this job, everything, but the shul, the fact that I'm a frum yid, that I'm able to serve Hashem, it's all from Hashem. It's not from Rafi. I won't say his last name. It's not from Rafi. He's not the one who gave me all this. And so my value is, I'm not going to shake, that I don't shake a woman's hand, I'm not going to shake her hand. And I know this probably means the end of this job, but I'm young.
Why didn't
I'll recover.
Explain it to her?
It's too fast. Everyone was walking past, but listen, yeah, I did explain. I said something. Yeah, I said something. You'll see. Listen to the story. It's not over yet. Do you want me to stop the story now, or we could just go on?
I just want to say you have a real conundrum, because you had 2 religious guys before you did it.
Right, 2 religious guys before me did it.
Then you make them embarrassed.
Right, I make them embarrassed. You know, they go, well, if it's good enough for them, what's wrong with you? It was a terrible scenario. It was awful. It was horrible. I don't know Hashem's sense of humor, putting a young rabbi through that. It's crazy. Anyway, but I made up my mind. I'm not shaking her hand, no matter what. I'll try and explain it. I'll try and make it sound good and everything, but she ain't getting in my hand. That's it. So we come, I shake the president's hand. I'm like praying that she drops something and she has to pick it up or something. Like I have all these crazy prayers, because remember, it's only a few seconds, but in my mind it's like days, right? And she sticks out her hand like this. Right in front of me. And I go, I am so sorry, but out of respect for my religion, I don't shake women's hands. She turned red, pink, blue, purple, and white. And whatever color she turned, Rafi, in my peripheral vision, had turned those colors, but a more intense hue of them. And I was like, okay, that's it. So the next morning I go to work. I haven't been told anything yet. We didn't have emails on our phones in those days, Baruch Hashem. So I thought I have to still show up at work, but you know, I show up at work, I'm sitting at my desk shaking, a little bit of a lack of bitachon, I guess. And my boss, one of the religious guys, says, Avram, please come to my office. So I'm like, okay, this is it. That's fine. I made my decision, and Hashem will take care. And I walk into to his office, and he says, Avraham, you're on speakerphone. We have this lady from HR, the vice president, and she has something to tell us, but she has asked me to call you into the room. I'm like, gosh, Hashem, can't you make this easy? Why couldn't you have just said, you're fired, pack up your things and go? Like, no. I have to be in front of this woman, and she has to like rub it in, and make it even worse, and then get fired. It's like, okay, so I'm standing there in the room, and the woman says to the person, P, is Avraham in the room? She says, yes, he's in the room. Okay, she says, okay, I wanted to tell you, gentlemen, the following. And there were a few other people in the room as well, by the way, a few other people. I want to tell you something, but I wanted to tell it to you all together. This is what she said. We are awarding you the contract. Congratulations. And I want to tell you why. The reason we are awarding you the contract, it was very close. It came between two of you were very, very close. You both have the features we're looking for. We feel like there's a good energy, a good connection between the companies. We think we would have succeeded with either of them. We chose yours because Avram refused to shake my hand. And I thought, wow, that must have been really hard for him. But if that is the caliber of person that they hire, that stick to their values to that level, that's the company we could work with. And, so, and needless to say, I wasn't fired. Yeah, so that's what it says over here. It's he bought me a pen. As a gift. When he bought me that pen, I made up my mind, I'm going into business for myself. No more working for another person. So, this is it. If you have bitachon, like my friend, there's no nerves, there's no flattery, there's no, I have to compromise who I am, I have to go out partying with them in ways that are inappropriate, that are not consistent with my values, because if I don't do that, how am I going to make money? You know, there's a guy, his name's David Schottenstein, and he's an amazing young man, like really, truly remarkable person, a philanthropist. Do you know that shortly after he got married, he actually married my wife, one of my wife's good friends. Shortly after he got married, he sold one of his businesses, for $115 million US. That's real money, right? Can you imagine $115 million? By the way, that was, he sold his company for more. That was the after-tax amount of money that was in his bank account after the transaction was completed.
What business?
It was, I think it was a clothing business, a suit business or something. Schmatters, yeah.
You built it or inherited?
He built it. He started it from scratch. Young guy. No, look, he comes from a lot of money, which helps. The Schottenstein family, you know the Art Scroll Gemaras, the English Art Scroll Gemaras? That's his family. It's his uncle. So, yeah, he came from that. But this was something he started. He's very entrepreneurial, and he, Dafka, did not want money from his family to start this business. He started himself, he built it up, he sold it, he's done that with multiple businesses. Even before this. This was the biggest exit that he had to that date. He gets a call from a person who says, I want to meet with you. And he meets with this person, and the person says, your uncle runs a public company. Find out certain things about this public company and tell me. Let me know. And we'll trade on it. It's called insider trading. It's a big, big avera. It's one of the 10 Commandments. You're not allowed to do it. Her? Yeah, Nancy Pelosi does it. She's very good at it, actually. You know, Nancy Pelosi. All right, don't have to speak about Nancy Pelosi. So, this is true. So, he comes to, he decides he's going to do it. Now, afterwards, he's like, why did I decide to do that? I just told the company I have $115 million plus in the bank account. Why did I do that? Do you know how much money he made on that insider trading? $27,000. That's how much he made on insider trading. And at one stage, he said, I have to go and speak to this partner. And his wife said, call him. Because he was literally going to travel to his house and speak to him. He said, call him. He said, no, this is something you don't speak about on the phone. And his wife said, if you cannot speak about it on the phone, don't speak about it at all. But he didn't have bitachon. He didn't have bitachon. So he's like thinking about it, like, why did I do this? Because I thought I could lose that 115 million if I don't do this. Something in his brain was telling him that you have to cheat. Because if you don't, that was a one and done. It was a fluke. You were lucky. But who's to say it'll ever happen again? And he didn't have the bitachon that Hashem would look after him, so he did this. And he got caught. And he went to jail for a year, minus a day. No, a year plus a day. Year plus a day. That was kindness, because the judge was so impressed people vouched for him and everything, that the judge said, I'll give you a year plus a day. A year plus a day, it puts, I don't understand it, but it puts them in a different category, so they can actually now get out earlier. If it's a year, up to a year, the person has to serve their full sentence. They must be there for a year. But if you say a year and a day, then they can let you off for good behavior. And I think he was actually in jail for a lot less than an actual year, maybe 10 months, 9-10 months. But you can imagine the shame, the embarrassment of losing his standing in the community and everything. So he lost so much through that experience. But at the time of the trial, him and his wife sat down every day and they started learning Shari B'Tochen. And he said, I wish I would have done that before. I would never have done this if I'd done it before, because that's what he's saying over here. When you have B'Tochen, Hashem is going to give you the money. You don't have to cheat. You don't have to go against anything which says in Shulchan Aruch. You can daven with the minyan, rock up late to work, and be the best in your division. You don't have to skip the minyan to be on time to work for them to admire, because it's not them, it's Hashem. So this is what is the main idea over here. Okay. So he says among the Torah benefits of B'Tochen, a person who trusts in God, his trust will bring him to turn his heart away from a preoccupation with worldly matters and instead dedicate himself to matters of divine service. In terms of the tranquility of his soul, peace of mind, and lack of worry regarding worldly matters, he can be compared to an alchemist. And now I'm going to introduce the alchemist, because the Shari B'Tochen is going to speak about the alchemist for a lengthy passage about the alchemist. So what is an alchemist? Does anyone know what an alchemist is?
They used to believe they could turn
Like a chemist.
cheap metals into gold.
Cheap metals into gold. What's that?
Turn straw into gold.
Straw into gold, or copper into gold, or whatever, cheap metals into more expensive metals. They believed that, I don't know if they believed it or they aspired to that, they worked on it, but you know, the whole subject of chemistry, the whole the entire chemistry started at that moment. In other words, chemistry that's provided us in modern times with so many incredible inventions, chemistry was started because people wanted to turn copper into gold. And if they could, and they developed the study of chemistry based on that aspiration. But I did a little bit digging, because when I came, this is quite confronting. I have a friend who's brilliant, he's absolutely brilliant. And I told him I'm starting to learn Shari B'Tochen. I have to tell you the story of why I started to learn Shari B'Tochen. There's a very strong Australian connection to this, how the Rebbe told me to learn Shari B'Tochen, but it'll come for another day, please God. So I told my friend that I'm learning Shari B'Tochen, I'm really diving into it, and he said he started learning Shari B'Tochen, he got to where we are now, and then he read about the alchemist, and he was like, oh man, I can't deal with this. He's like a scientist and a skeptic, and he was like, the way that he talks about the alchemist is as if it's like a real thing. Like there is actually an alchemist that can take copper and turn into gold and make a fortune. And he was like, nah, that's too naive for me, I'm out of here. And he walked away from Shari B'Tochen. He's lost. So I did a little bit, so when he told me that, I was like, oh yeah, what are alchemists? So I did a little digging on this place called Wikipedia. I don't know if you know about it. So Wikipedia says, there's a lot of alchemists in Wikipedia, by the way. That's where they hang out. So I went to Wikipedia and I found out some really interesting things about alchemists. There are like historians who say that the alchemists were just frauds. So they knew chemistry enough, or they had the ability to create chemical reactions that would turn copper into something that looked like gold, or silver into something that looked like gold. And it was good enough of a fake that it fooled everybody, and you know, that's how they made their money. But there are other historians who say that they never achieved their goal of turning base metals into expensive metals, basic metals into expensive metals. They never achieved that. But what they did, and they never even tried to trick people, right? There's historians that said they were a group of people who used turning silver into gold or copper into gold. They used it as a metaphor, and they were really philosophers, and they were trying to bring out the greatness of a human being. So they were turning human beings into better human beings. They were helping human beings self-actualize. And they were really a very good, noble group of people who tried to turn our baser instincts, humans' baser instincts, into more precious qualities. And so they were actually philosophers, and their focus was on developing humans. I think probably they're both right. You know, as a rabbi, I can say you're both right. And I think there was probably some of them that were more focused on self-improvement, and others that were more focused on tricking and cheating the public. It didn't go well for them, and I'll explain why it didn't go well on Sunday with Hashem's help.
Any questions?
Yes, take a few questions.
There's a conflict of, you know, just finish a story about the Pasuk who had the Galatians factory, and it was the Brainian that said, I understand the key to Galatians, but I heard the Galatians.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other story of the Rebbe out of the Brainian, I don't know what year it was, and he said, who wants wealth?
Mm-hmm.
And people were reluctant to stand up because they don't want to look like they're wealth. And the people who stood up actually became wealthy. So how's that resolved?
I think I addressed that a little bit in the first afternoon session on Wednesday. So the question was, how do you reconcile this tension that it seems that one should not be overly concerned and involved in amassing wealth, and then what the Rebbe said, that people who want to be wealthy, during Purim one year the Rebbe said people who want to be wealthy should make themselves known, and only very few people put up their hand, and they did become very wealthy. So how do you reconcile this? I think the story of a cup in galoshes is the reconciliation. That is the reconciliation. In other words, a person should earn a livelihood. You have to. It's a mitzvah to earn a livelihood, to support your family. But it should be done, it shouldn't be, it's like, where is your focus? It shouldn't be your primary focus, you shouldn't be preoccupied with it, you shouldn't obsess over it. It should be a part of your life. So you do what you're supposed to do because Hashem said you should do you should do that. Hashem said you should work, therefore you should work. Not, I will work because that is what Hashem, because that's what brings the wealth. That's not what brings the wealth. You need to work because Hashem told you to work. So that's the framework of the answer. It needs a lot more discussion. It's a very important question. I do want to address it. So Mitzvah Hashem, over the next few days that we learn together, I'll look forward to addressing that. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you on 12 o'clock.